welcome to the Game Plan Coaching Podcast. Today I'm joined by a good friend and a former coaching colleague, Liam Gilbert. Liam's coached across the women's game for over a decade, with head coach roles at Oxford United, Reading, and recently as assistant manager at Burnley Women. He's a UEFA A licensed coach, a leader in women's football, and someone who I've learned a huge amount from over the years. In this conversation, Liam shares insights and lived experience from coaching in senior women's football, from building trust and connection to creating shared identity and accountability within a team. We also get into his coaching road trip with lessons in leadership from some of the coaching greats and the importance of having a golden thread that runs through your coaching. Here's Liam Gilbert. Right, Liam, we're going on a 3-day coaching road trip. Who are we going to see and where are we going to go?
Are we staying in the present time, or are we able to
We've got a TARDIS. We could go forwards and backwards in time as well. Yeah. So where would you take us?
Because the first stop for me, just because the effect he's had on football and the way that we now view the game in this country, I think we'd take a trip to Manchester, to the blue side, and go and go see Pep, go and see how he operates, how he carries himself. I think that would be a really good learning experience and a very hands-on experience to get one end of the spectrum.
You're in the elevator with Pep at the massive training ground. Like, what question would you ask him?
What does success look like to you? Because I feel like, because the way his philosophy and style evolves, that's probably an ever-changing question. I don't think it's ever been to win one or two trophies, leagues. It's always been, well, he's left dynasties, he's left a mark everywhere he's been, hasn't he? So that's like what he did at Barca, obviously what he then did at Bayern, and now what he's in the process of doing at City, which he's potentially facing more roadblocks here than he has done. So what does success look like now, or what does success look like for him as a coach? Or is that different to what it looks like for him as a manager?
Better never stops, as they say.
Yeah.
Go on then, where are we going next? We've seen Pep.
I've seen Pep. Gonna head across to the States, and we're going to use the TARDIS.
Okay.
I'd love to go and be a fly on the wall for the Patriots when they were at their peak. Go and see Bill Belichick, that Tom Brady dynamic, because I feel like you've got two alphas in a same scenario, how that situation was managed, why they were so successful in a sport that's built on parity. I think that's the fair way to put it, like with the way the draft system works over there. So I'd like to go and see that. And I think that's a completely different style. From the outside, they're different types of people, and they've had very similar they've had similar success. So, because there's no one way to do everything, is there? So just to see like the differences in that.
And I suppose for people who are listening who don't know anything about American football, I guess the draft system completely changes the way that you might select and then think about building a team.
Yeah, because you can't buy players in. I mean, you can trade, and there's like obviously a free agency market, but you can't buy players the same way you can in football. You have to trust your processes. You have to nurture your own talent as your main priority in terms of building the franchise, to use the American language.
Go on then, question. So draft system exists in football here. You're the head coach. What kind of person would be your first pick in the draft?
First pick in the draft. Am I starting from a completely clean team?
You've got carte blanche.
Carte blanche. Holding midfielder. Because I think they're so important to every aspect of play. In possession, out of possession, transitions. If you can get that person to be the player you want them to be, and I think that's why we're seeing players in that position go for big amounts of money in the English game. If you can get that right person, you can build a squad around them. They're not always the one that gets the headlines, but they're the ones that can dictate tempo, speed of play, understanding of game plan, philosophy, like what you're trying to implement, and have probably the biggest effect on it.
Go on then, third visit on our road trip. We've got Pep, Patriots. We've got another one that starts with a P.
The alliteration already. I'd go to Spain. And again, this is looking at a little bit of a different aspect. I go and watch go to Madrid under Carlo Ancelotti. I think that's again, it's a different type of leader, different type of organization, and obviously some of the success they've had in recent years, well, across their history, but in recent years, and managing to keep so many, I don't want to use the term egos, but so many like higher end players happy and achieving one goal. I think that would be an interesting dynamic, because like if you think about his career, where he started to where he's now ending up, and the awards and everything he's won on the way, sorry, he's had to play different styles of football. He's a different person now available, and it's a career that spanned 40 years, I think. So just, yeah. And the elevator conversation with him would be a lot different to Pep's one. It'd be interesting to sit and really ask someone like that, like what's changed over your first 5 years compared to your last 5 years, and how you, because I think he speaks a lot about his leadership and how he empowers people, and the way that he's a bit more standoffish in terms of some of the bits on the grass, because it's a different, trying to find the word, just a different way of going about it.
Thinking about you and your experiences, so you're assistant manager at Burnley Women at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You've been head coach at Reading in the Championship, and at Oxford Women before, when we first met and started coaching together. How would you do it? How do you make sure that you create the conditions for players to be at their best? Especially, I know the context is different, but especially when you've got different personalities and motivations for being there. What's in your toolbox?
One of the biggest things I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn, is that as much as we're all driven by results, right? Like you can be fired, you can be promoted based on your results, but everything's people first. If you've got a team of people that will play for you and will pull for you, that will go a lot further than a team of over talented players that just turn up. So I feel like the more I'm going on my journey, how to create lasting relationships with players, but making sure that it stays driven towards what your objectives are or what your target is. And then as you start to step back from that what do we need to implement to make sure we maximize what we've got? And you don't go so far that you're just doing things to appease people. You're setting out structures, processes that you believe or that will get the results you want, but it's making sure you've got people that will pull in the direction you need them to pull in. You can have someone with all the talent in the world, but if they don't believe in what you're doing, or they don't believe in you or what you stand for, then are they going to do what you want them to do when push comes to shove?
So Liam, look, I've kind of mentioned some of your coaching background and some of the roles that you've had, but would you tell us just a bit about your journey in and through coaching, and maybe like who or what's influenced you and the way you coach?
So started my coaching journey in America. So I was fortunate enough to play in America. I had a football scholarship, soccer football scholarship. And after I finished my playing, I was asked to stay on the coaching staff for a season and work with the team that I spent 4 years playing with. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being in football, because it's what I've known most of my life, trying to help people to be better every day and trying to help a team, a group achieve a goal. Because one of the reasons why we are involved in team sport is because we like that collective identity. We like that shared purpose, that shared processes, if you like, and sometimes that doesn't go how you want it to go, and sometimes you get things wrong. As long as that's the main thing for me, that I'm working with a group of people that have a similar mindset, or we're working towards something. So after I finished in America, I came back to England to play, and I started coaching with Eastleigh Football Club. I took their under 18, so I worked there for a few years, and then started work as a teacher alongside coaching in Oxford. And after 6 months, a job opened up on the women's side at Oxford United. So started with the development team, under 23 team. After a season, because of a restructure of the women's football pyramid, the first team were demoted from a league, and I got the opportunity to take the first team. And that's sort of when it went from more coach-based to management-based. So I spent 5 great years at Oxford, and we had great success. And then had the opportunity to take over Reading, which was a different opportunity altogether. It's going from semi-professional football to then going into full professional football. We're going from training 2, sometimes 3 nights a week, to you're in full time, you're in the building. So that was a steep learning curve against well, a tumultuous situation at the club. And then, unfortunately, after a season, managing to keep the team in the Championship against quite significant odds, in my opinion, then the team was disbanded, and I then started working at Burnley in March of this year because I believe in the project that the club are putting in place.
You've mentioned this a few times already. You said collective identity earlier. You believed in like the plan at Burnley, which drew you into the role. How important is having that kind of higher purpose of what you're trying to achieve, and what your experiences of getting that buy-in from the group of players and staff?
So I think the experience I had at Reading taught me a lot, because you're inheriting a situation that which wasn't straightforward. And for the first season, because I only came into the role a week before the season started, when I've had some time to take a step back and think about what I want, if everything isn't joined up in terms of what you have the ability to go and achieve, and like, don't get me wrong, everything is not in a straight line. Everything's not like as straightforward as you want it to be. It never is in football. I wanted to find a place that agreed with my principles in terms of how I want to be involved in a football team, and then the values of how the organisation wants to operate. So I think that's with my first two roles in management. We were fortunate at Oxford where we were allowed to drive the programme in the direction we wanted to. Whereas obviously when you move into a professional game, it's different. You're dictated by different stakeholders, and sometimes you can't control what you can't control. So it's what's within my remit that I can control and I can affect. Can I have a positive effect on it? And can I see myself thriving or pushing forward within that environment?
We obviously spent some time together when we coached at Oxford. When you look back on your time there, and you said earlier that you had great success while you were at the club, and I remember from one of the seasons we had, finished second in the league. When you look back on those times, what are you really proud of achieving?
I think we formed a togetherness with players and staff there, which, like, go back to the first point that we spoke about, probably underpinned everything that we did. We've all been in environments where everyone's pulling in the same direction, but it doesn't always play out that way. Whereas I can hand on heart say in that environment, we had everyone pulling in the same direction. And we had a group of staff that would always go above and beyond. We had a group of players that believed in everything that we put forward and would push each other. Because I think a really important thing in successful groups, like teams, organizations, is accountability. And I think accountability is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but when you can see it on a regular basis and when you can feel it, I think that is probably one of the most powerful tools, because it's easy for someone to go, yeah, fine, I can do this better. But does it have more effect going, no, we'll do this better together? And like, you're having those characters and that personnel to push in the way that you want to push to continue to move forward. One thing for me is I've always wanted to, in everywhere I've been in, as a player, as a coach, as a manager, is you always want more. You always want to be better. And sometimes that's possible because there's only so much an individual or a group can do. But if you're always trying to move forward and trying to push forward, you're always tackling problems head on. You're always moving into any problems you may face, and you're always better than you were a week earlier, a month earlier, because of that process.
You've jolted my memory of the Rudyard Kipling quote that you used to have in the team: the strength of the pack is within the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is in the pack.
I heard that for a little while. Yeah, but I guess that's if you want to take it to an animalistic basis, that's, if you look at how they operate as a species and the way that they look after their own to try and continue to hunt, to forage, to move forward is it a pack? Yeah, it's a pack. I was going to say, but I think that's an easy way that you can associate a football team, a group with.
Okay, so Liam, in every episode of our game plan coaching podcast, we're building something that I call the game plan. So it's a shared playbook of stories and ideas and lessons that coaches can draw on. And I'm inviting every guest on the podcast to add something new into the game plan. So what is it that you're bringing with you?
One of the best things I've picked up on as you go is having processes in place and having a consistent structure. And I'm not talking about like what time you start, what time you finish, just how you go about your week, how you set your sessions up. So what, like being clear in terms of what your objectives are. So say in a session we've noticed at the weekend the opposition is poor defensive transitions. So framing the session so it's not I'm just going to do a passing practice that looks like that because I just want to work on touches. Then not going in a possession where we just want to keep the ball. It's making sure everything has a purpose as you move forward, so that everything from your passing pattern, like say if we were doing a transition one, you look at a passing pattern where you have a pass that breaks line with a runner moving on to the ball, and then does this possession practice that follow that have the same theme, same structure, so that as you progress through your session, you've potentially done half your work for you by the time you get to a structured 11v11 or a phase of play that is where it gets the end goal out, or the target that you want to get out.
So you said something a moment ago, framing sessions could be about the opposition and their strengths and therefore how we need to play. Have you got any other stories about how you have framed sessions for players in the past and how that's helped them see the bigger picture and the why of what we're doing?
Yeah, I think probably I've skated over it, but I've always believed in that everything you do as a football coach, even more so in the environment we're now is built off your own principles. So obviously the aspect there that I've identified, we would do it in a way that was always consistent with us. So if we're looking at that aspect, are we looking at being direct and going over the top? That's something that the players that we had when we were together at Oxford, for example, that wasn't our strength. So that wasn't the way that we would try and utilize that. So when all the way that we structure our sessions was always underpinned by a consistent philosophy or a consistent style of play. Every time you're doing a session, you're not teaching a completely new principle, because that's what your pre-season's for. You're then just layering up and adding to bits of work that you've done. Maybe it's 3 months earlier, maybe it's 3 weeks earlier. Then you're just continuing to tweak and change how you want it to look in that specific occasion, but based off of whatever your agreed principles are. So obviously as a manager, it's your dictated principles for the most part. But as part of a coaching team, it's like in my role now as assistant manager, it's agreed principles. So, right, this is how we deem that we're most effective in this phase of play. And this is how we think we can utilize this phase of play to the best of our ability to exploit a perceived weakness in the opposition.
If you're thinking about planning or practice design over a medium term, do you always have in your mind where you want to end up? Or are you kind of quite happy that as long as we've got the right intentions, this could go in a few different directions, but as long as it aligns to like our principles and our philosophy as a club, but it's the process of how we get there that's the important thing.
Yeah. The process is the most important thing, because how many times have we, as coaches at whatever stage of our journey, have we turned up and we've started off with a session where we're looking at, we'll stick on the theme of attacking transitions, but actually we've then gone, oh, we're not as strong as we thought we were with the defensive transition. So you're getting out what you want in terms of how you've originally set, but then because you've gone so like everything's gone as well as you wanted it to with the first side of it, right, now we can layer up and add more detail around the opposite side of the ball. And all like you put something on a piece of paper and it doesn't work, or you put it on the tactics board, it doesn't work. And that happens all the time. Like how many times, well, any level of football now, every team has a game plan of how they want to affect the opposition or how they want to put their best foot forward, but it doesn't always work. Something may change. So how do you change? How do you adapt within the situation? Whereas I think some coaching sessions are like that. I normally set down, I want to hit these 5 targets, or it's probably a bit much at times, 3 to 5 targets. And if we get 4 and 5 in, brilliant. But if we've had to deviate and focus on something else, that's what the game of football is. If you're talking switching a play, but you can't complete passes inside the half space, then you can't switch the ball to the opposite side of the pitch if you're trying to play across the pitch, play in possession base. So how do you adapt that problem then get the goal out that you want.
Yeah, I mean, adapting and problem solving, massive skills as a coach. I remember earlier in my journey being wedded to the session plan. Like, I've designed this, so we're going to do it regardless of what's happening and unfolding in front of me. I mean, you may as well have had a mannequin delivering the session. And I suppose it's just from experience and time and recognizing that doesn't necessarily work to become a little bit more free and adaptable, but perhaps requires a dose of humility sometimes as a coach to say, well, this was my intention, but that's not where we're going tonight. We'll go with what the players need or what I'm noticing in front of me. So when you've done that and when you've kind of gone with the energy of what the group needs, what are the skills that you need as a coach to feel like you can be a bit more adaptable and dynamic?
I think probably going back to one of the first things you spoke about in terms of like accountability. Like, so if again, one thing, like from my early days of my coaching journey, you think as a coach that you have to have all the answers and everything you say has to be so. The same way the players do. We don't always get everything as right as we want to. And if you can, from a leadership point of view, if you can go, yeah, I'll hold my hands up, I've got that wrong, then it allows you to be a little bit more open, a little bit more trusting with the group that you're working with. Obviously, you can't do that 3 times in a week because then they ain't going to trust what you're saying and what you're doing anyway. But I feel like if you can, like, you put your hand up because you own stuff, because you're proud of what you do and why you do it, and you've got your clear outcomes, but it doesn't work. So you hold your hand up. But the skill as a coach, as you've alluded to, is, all right, that hasn't worked exactly how I wanted to here, but we've looked at this bit here. I then need to reflect after the session of why the first stage didn't happen. Because I think that's a really important part of our journey and part of our understanding of where we're working with that review process of what has happened, why was it successful, why was it not successful, and then how would I adapt or how would I do it differently next time. Sometimes, and we all love this, we go, yeah, this session worked great, distances were great, outcomes were great, brilliant, keep that in the locker, move on. But is it a conversation after session? Could it have been bigger? Could it have been wider? Could we have put a rule in place that could have dictated what we wanted to happen a little bit more?
The ability to dial down your ego, because everyone's got an ego and sometimes it can get in the way, but to dial that ego down and say, well, yeah, could have been better, could have tweaked this, could have changed it. Well, that's where the growth is. That's going to help you evolve and develop, and ultimately that's best for the players. If you're kind of fixed about the way you do your work as a coach, your work as a coach might go out of date quite quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously to caveat that a little bit, there's also got to be times where you're like, right, we've got everything right in terms of how we wanted to structure it, but the outcomes haven't come out. Everyone's human, right? So there are those days where the ball isn't moving as crisp as you wanted it to, or a bobble affects something that you didn't expect, or like someone on the team, like if you're working in set teams, someone on the other team is affecting what you're trying to do more than you expected them to. So yes, there's the point of like, yes, we need to be adaptable, but then there are other points as well where you have to stick within your principles and your framework and go, right, no, this is what we've set out to do, and this is we still believe we can achieve this. We're still going to persevere and go for it. But I think it's just trying to find the right balance with that, because I think if you're too reactive to everything you see in front of you, then you lose your identity as a coach, or you lose your identity in what you're trying to do. But then you also go too far in terms of it doesn't become accountable. Then it becomes just an excuse. So I think you just have to get that right balance. So I know I spoke a bit about that two-way relationship, but at the end of the day, if you know something you want to see and you know that something's going to come through, there are other times when you have to go, no, we're doing this, and like, if we have to do an extra 5 minutes, we have to do an extra set, extra rep, whatever it may be, we know what we need to get out, and we're going to do it till it comes out the right way.
What you've just demonstrated is the fact that there's no silver bullet in coaching, and it depends. It depends on so many different factors. Liam, so you're adding in, I'll paraphrase here, to the game plan, a clear process and structure, maybe a subheading here of being adaptable, engaged, and humble as a coach. All right. Well, look, Liam, we like to end every one of our episodes with something practical for coaches to perhaps take away and maybe use in their own environment, they might want to pick it up and try it at training tonight. So have you got some game-changing advice for our listeners? Maybe something they could apply or adapt or reflect on in their own coaching?
I think it would be having that clear process.
Okay.
Is to have your session designed, so whatever your main outcome is, can you plan a session that follows that theme all the way through? So I use transition as the example, so I'll stick with that. So can you have every aspect of your practice, whether it's your activation, your warm up, your technical, into your possession, into your whatever size game you do? Obviously, there are people that will listen to this that will work in 7-a-side football. There may be people that work in 11-a-side football. So our remits are different. But can you have one clear theme with loads of side objectives that you want to get out? But can you have a clear theme all the way through your design so that you can if you can watch it back, great. Or if you can reflect back on it, you go, right, this thing we did in the first element of our practice came out in the last element.
So a golden thread that runs through the session.
I need to work on some cliches, I think.
It's not a cliche. I'm just summarizing what you said. But yeah, I think if you're able to link the first thing that the players are doing when they arrive through to the last thing that they do when you finish, and there's consistency in what we're going after, the type of language you might use. Maybe you think about the energy perhaps in the session as well. What moments do we need more intensity, and when are the moments when we can pull that back?
Yeah.
But having the golden thread through surely helps everybody's learning process.
Yeah. And then I think another thing, just on the point you said there, like if you're splitting a session into, say it's a possession practice, into 4 blocks, if you as a coach you normally drive something and you're the one who brings a lot of the energy, do that for the first block and just be quiet for the second block and see what happens. Are they taking on board what you want them to because you've told them to do it, or because they understand what you're doing? And then obviously you've got 2 more blocks to play with in terms of how you want to drive and how you want to push things.
Because you're doing so much work with players on a weekly basis, and there's potentially so much information for them to absorb, how do you help them not forget stuff?
Consistent reminders. So that links back in terms of the golden thread we've just spoken about. If you know what your clear outcomes are, and you can say at the start of the session, we're going after X, Y, and Z, and then at the end of the session, you can reflect back and go, all right, we did this to achieve this, we did this to achieve that. Then I think that's just a way of summarizing everything that you've talked about, and then making it so it's like an easier way for players to remember. Some of the players I worked with in the past, work with now, that like a general reminder on a game day, you've done this this week, go and carry it into the game. And some will be like, yeah, no, I've got it all on board, I'm okay. So it's just, I guess that goes back to those individual relationships. Like when we're in school, in terms of one of the ways we're taught to learn is you go over your lesson and there's the 3 bullet points or lesson objectives you get given. So if we're talking about, depending on what age you work at, we're wanting players to learn, and we're wanting players to take what we're giving them on board, and we want them to put it into practice. So to summarize and bullet point a bigger project when you may have spoken about 100 little intricacies within it, right? If we carry on with the transition example, like we've spoken about how we can break through, but we may have talked in the session about your timing, your distances, your speed of play, your detail of pass, but that can all be summarized in, this is what we're looking at, and this is what we're end up doing.
Yeah, I think bringing those ideas to the front of people's minds definitely has an impact on their recall, and then the ability of them feeling like they can go and perform them.
Yes.
Different context. I was coaching the under-12s this week, and we were working on a topic which was different to the week before, and I couldn't see any of the things we'd worked on last week coming out in the practice. So we paused and we talked about, well, what was our focus last week? What were our intentions? Changing point of attack. So we spoke about, well, how does that work then? And where do we need to be? And what are we thinking about before we have the ball, after we release it? And then it was if like some magic dust had been sprinkled on these kids, that they remembered it all of a sudden, front of the mind, feel confident to go and give it a go. So being able to help the players interrupt them forgetting about things is really important, because I suppose as a coach, you see the whole picture a lot of the time. Whereas with the players, their point of view is really different.
Yeah. And I guess with the age group you're talking about, they've got 10 other things going on in their life that they turn up to football for an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long it may be, but then they've been at school all day, or they've been around their friends for dinner, or like there's so many things going on in lives that having like those clear outcomes, points, that it just gives them that easy way to just reflect back or think back to.
Liam, thanks for coming on the podcast today. I'm going to try and summarize in three short headlines.
Yeah.
So creating a buy-in that gives your team a collective identity is massive. Helps them understand the why behind every practice and every intervention you make as a coach. Being humble is really important while you're coaching, but not to the point of being overrun by the views of everybody in the group. And then finally, having a golden thread that runs through your practice, supports learning, and probably helps performance as well. And thank you for coming on, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Game Plan Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please follow the show and share it with a coach who might find it useful. I'd love to hear your feedback and any ideas for future guests. You can get in touch through the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and go well in your next coaching session.